Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. So this video is going to be a not so historically accurate Regency petticoat. So I'm kind of just done with like the hand sewing. But it's just going to be inspired by Regency. I'm kind of taking a lot of liberty with this. I'm going to try to get this done as quick as possible because I want to start working on a new dress and not the under things. So let's get started. Okay, so here's my drawing. This is what it's kind of going to look like. So it's going to have a waistband, a bodice, and a skirt. These are just going to be, it's going to be one piece for the skirt sewn in the back, same with the bodice and same with the waistband. And these straps are going to be attached separately because it's just easier that way. So then I drew out my pattern here, which is literally just a rectangle for everything basically. And then I marked out that I'm going to be sewing 1 inch darts in the bodice just to give it a little bit of extra shape. So yeah, I've just kind of measured myself out. I don't know how this is gonna go. Yeah, it's gonna have buttons, and then I think I'm gonna have a drawstring too. And then I did use examples from museums to see how the skirt was done. It's mostly just pleated in the back with light gathering on the front, so that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I'm gonna get cutting and experimenting. Okay, so when I was editing this video, I realized I never really explained where I got my ideas from. So I used 3 examples from different sources. The first example is the most major one I used. It's also the one that Bernadette based her Regency petticoat off of, which is a petticoat in the archives of the Met Museum. So for the skirt, I based it off of how that skirt looked and even like how many pleats were in the back and how it shut and everything. And then for the bodice, I didn't really like the way that bodice was because I wanted mine to be a little bit more supportive just because I'm not, if I decide I don't want to wear stays or something, or if the stays show with the dress I designed, I just want to be able to wear the petticoat and not have the stays. So this took a little bit more interpretation. For this, I based the bodice off of an example from the Victoria and Albert Museum, as well as a random picture I found online of a wow, I had a brain fart, of I think it's called a garment fragment or something like that. And it's basically just this bodice that looks like it was half sewn from about that time. So I kind of put those 2 together and put my own design in it, and then I just came up with what I thought would work the best. I couldn't find a lot of examples of what petticoats looked like in the Regency era, so this is just my interpretation of something that maybe could have been designed. It's not necessarily based off of something super specific. So I just wanted to add that little note in so you know where I got my stuff. I'll link everything below if you want to look at it, as well as Bernadette Bander's video on how she designed hers, which I took a lot of inspiration from, and I love her, so thank you. But yes, I will let you get back to watching me design my petticoat. So I started off for this project pre-shrinking my fabric, just washing and drying the raw fabric. This way it shrinks as much as it needs to and it won't ever shrink again. And I did this because the measurements on this project are very specific, so I don't want them to change at all. Next what I did was just measure out my pattern pieces and then make a little snip where I need to cut it and tear along a single thread. This is my favorite method because it's very easy and does not require much cutting.
You're so cute.
Why am I so cute?
You film everything you do. You're gonna be like the best documented person ever.
I love how my family members visit me when I'm sewing. So after my visit from my mom, I continued cutting out what I needed to, and at first I just cut out the main panel of the skirt, and this is what it looked like. It was just a giant rectangle. Then what I did was do a quick rolled seam by machine on the edges of the skirt. This way, when I sewed it together in the back, I wouldn't have to worry about any finishing, because I usually fell stuff down and I just, not about that. Then I went on to the pleats, and this I just made my own pleating tool with a piece of cardboard that was 1 inch wide, and there were 6 1-inch pleats on either side of the back closure. So then I just sewed these down by machine to hold them into place. Once they were all sewn down, it was time to attach them to the waistband, but first I had to cut out the waistband. And then to get this all set up, I just ironed the little strip in half, and then I folded down each half over to the middle line that was made by the iron, and this way you have a wonderful 1/2 inch seam allowance to sew along. I also finished the edges. I did this by folding down the end and then felling it into place. I did this so that I wouldn't have to really worry about the finishing after this was all done, and I would just have this done beforehand. Then I pinned the waistband to the skirt and sewed it in place by machine, following the line I made with the iron. Okay, so I have got my 2 bodice pieces cut out. It's actually just one long piece to make it easy on myself, but there's 2 layers because I am not sure if I'm going to be finishing my stays in time for when I want to wear this, so I might just be wearing just this. And so I need a second layer to give me support and to, make sure nothing's see-through, because I don't like people being able to see through my clothes. So my plan for this is I'm basically going to sew along the top and then flip it around so that the top has a very nice clean finish, and then I'm going to fold it in on the sides twice on each side so I can put the buttons, and then sew it at the bottom to the waistband. Before I flipped this right side out, I guess, I zigzag stitched the end. I wish it would focus before I cut it down, just to make sure it doesn't fray inside, because I just, why not? I just want extra security. Okay, so I'm just going to explain really quick. I sewed the top and then I flipped this right side out, then ironed it, and then I rolled these twice over, and this is just 1 inch, and this is where the buttons and buttonholes are going to go on both sides, and then I measured out where I want to put the darts. The darts are each 1 inch, so I'm going to sew those closed, and then I'm going to fell down these because I don't want this to show through to the other side, and attach this to the waistband. I have the darts pinned, and now I'm just going to sew these on the sewing machine. I have the darts sewn in now, and I'm just going to press them flat like this, and then fell them down on both sides, and fell this down on both sides, so that nothing shows through to the front. The darts are pressed down now, and I'm just going to fell to make sure they stay down, and I think I'm going to do it in a fun color since you're not going to see it at all from the other side. So I decided that fun color would be this really nice light pink because I just think it's really cute and girly. This thread was quite thick, but I really liked the color. It made it a little bit hard to actually get it through the fabric, so I kind of had to be a little violent with it. But in the end, it worked out really well, and I really like the way the inside looks. Oh, and also, I had to make sure with each stitch that I wasn't poking through to the other side because it was very obvious, so that was maybe a downside to using a fun color. Okay, we have all of the inside fell down for the bodice now, and this thread was thick, and so it made it a little bit harder to get through the fabric, and I was questioning it, like, is this gonna take super long? It actually didn't take that long. It was a little hard on the fingers, but I'm really happy with the result because I think it looks really nice. Even though no one's gonna see this, I'm still gonna know that it's pink on the inside. So now I'm just gonna give these an iron, and then I'm gonna get them attached to the skirt, which looks like a giant wad of fabric right now. Okay, so the whole skirt laid out. It's not sewed at the back where it's going to be closed yet. And I have the whole bodice pinned on, as you can see. And then I left on the sides. I'm not going to sew over this like finishing, I guess. So I'm leaving a 1/2 inch on each side so that when the back panels of the bodice overlap, the skirt lines up correctly. It probably won't make sense unless you're making this yourself, but anyway, that's just a little piece of information, I guess. And so hopefully I can get this sewn quickly. So like I said, I then very, very carefully sewed the bodice to the waistband, which connected the entire petticoat. And then what I did was trim down all of the extra seam allowance inside and just made sure everything was finished nicely. Then I pressed everything as flat as it could go to make sure that it laid really nicely with all the pleats and everything flat while I still had the inside of the waistband pretty raw. Next I realized that I was going to have to fold up the little end where the bodice the bodice was going to overlap, I guess. So I had to separate that by making a little snip, which is very, very terrifying. And then I just rolled this little extra bit up where the button, I guess, rectangles are, and I felled this down by hand to make sure that there was no raw seam. Next I folded over this little end bit because I hadn't yet sewn the back closed, and that was going to be folded over after. As you can see, it was a very nice clean result. Okay, so here's where I'm at. I have this all finished on the inside and I have everything secured, and now I just need the back piece of waistband, which I have here. And for this I'm going to zigzag the edges and then fell down the edges here and then attach it to that. I have the first part of the inner waistband pinned in, and I'm going to sew this part on the skirt side in by machine, and then I'm going to flip it over and fell this side down. I didn't want to do any hand sewing on this, but it turns out I did quite a bit. So I'm just going to get that done and then fell, and then after I do the buttonholes and attach the straps, we're done. Okay, so I have this bottom part sewn in, so now this just needs to be folded up and felled on the other side. And then that's the inside of the waistband. Then I can sew up the back. I just want to be clear, when I was felling the top part of the waistband, I only caught the part of the fabric that was the seam allowance and not the actual bodice. And after I was done securing the inner waistband, it was time to thread through the drawstring that was also going to help the back shut. I just did this by attaching a safety pin and working it through. Next, it was time to finally sew up the back, so I pinned the back seam closed and I left a little gap to make sure I could get it over my head. I think I left about 10 inches, which is quite a lot, but I wanted to make sure I could do it. Then it was time to pick out the buttons and go through this big button collection that someone gave me to find 3 matching buttons, which took longer than I wanted. Next, I put the buttons in the place I wanted, and I sewed them on. Then it was time to cut the buttonholes, which was also extremely terrifying. But to do this, I just pinned out where I thought they should go, then I made little markings, and then I snipped along the markings, but this actually was really hard because there was like 6 layers of fabric by the time I had folded back these seams, so it took me a while to actually cut through each buttonhole. Then what I did is mark out the number of stitches because I wanted to be precise so that each buttonhole would fit the buttons properly. I still failed at this the first time, so I had to redo the first one after I had finished, but all in all I was pretty pleased because this was my first time ever doing buttons. After my buttons were finished, I could finally try it on and make sure it fit, and I was very terrified it wasn't going to, but it did. And then it was time to make the straps. To make the straps, I first started by finishing the short edges, and to do this I just pressed them down and then I pinned them. And then I just quickly sewed them into place by sewing machine, and I don't really care because they aren't going to show on the outside of the dress anyway. So the next step was to pin the long edge and sew that by sewing machine all the way down. I've got these all sewn, now I just have to flip them inside out and press them, and then we have straps. Just finished making the straps for the petticoat. All I did was cut down the seam allowances and press them flat, and then I turned them inside out, press them again, so the seam allowances are going to sit on the underside. And then I just sewed up the edges like this so that they're a little bit more secure. Now I'm just going to attach them to the petticoat bodice and follow the ends down, I think. Okay, so I just had a fitting with the straps, and I'm glad I did because it was like too long, so I marked out where I actually want it now, and hopefully, I think it fits a lot better now, so. But I tried on the dress over it, and it looks super good. I marked out the new length of my straps, and then I attached them at that length, and then I'm just going to sew them on by machine right along the edge right here. I didn't cut it, I just left this in case I ever need to adjust it in the future. And I think what I'm just going to do is, after this is done, like either fell it, probably just fell it like with 2 or 3 stitches down right here. Just because it'll make it a lot easier if I ever need to adjust the straps for whatever reason in the future, like if I need to move them to the side more, it won't be that hard to do that. So I'm just going to do the front first, then go ahead and pin them to the back, and then sew those. So I was very careful when sewing these straps on to get right along the edge just so that it looked super neat, and I also kind of went back and forth multiple times. And then I was so excited because it was pretty much done. Okay, so we've got straps, and now all we have to do is the hem. And I'm not going to tack these down yet just because I want to make sure everything fits right. So I'm going to try this on again and see how long I want the hem. And then I'll do the hem, and I'll finish these, and then we're done. Okay, so after trying this on multiple times, I've ended up hemming it 6 inches, and how I did this was I just folded it up by 8 inches, and then folding it up by... Okay, so I basically... Okay, we're gonna start over, this is confusing. I marked out where 8 inches was, and then I folded it up so it would have been folded up with a 4-inch thing, and then I folded it up again. Now it is a 2-inch seam, and then I'm going to use a long machine stitch around here so it's easy to take out if I need to adjust it. The very last step, which I'm super excited about, is just to fell down this little edge right here of the strap, because I don't want this coming up all the time, and I tried it on and it totally did. So I'm just gonna fell this down, only catching the inner lining because I don't want to show through to the outside. So this should just, I mean, I'm not going to do a lot, just a couple stitches with just cheap polyester thread, and that way it'll be super easy to remove if I ever need to, for some reason, make the straps longer or shorter in the future. So after that, I am completely done with this project. Is anyone else sick of watching me sew yet? Because I am, and I realize how much I did on this project, and this is supposed to be a no hand sewing project. So it's finally completely done. I just finished sewing down all the straps on the inside, and I am super happy with the result. It looks really good. So I think that's it. So I hope you enjoyed watching that video. I did this in like 2 or 3 days, and I was super excited about it. This is literally so much fun for me to do, and I love making these videos, so I hope that everyone watching enjoys them too. And I can't wait for the next video, because that is going to be the actual ball gown I'm making, and I just can't wait to finish that project. I'm so close to being done and getting it up so everyone can see it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, and like this video if you like my content. I'll see you next time.